Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure, indeed my honor, to introduce our dedicated public servant and strong advocate for Oregon's rural communities, Congressman Cliff Bentz. He represents Oregon's sprawling 20-county-wide area encompassing much of eastern, central, and southern Oregon, including Medford. Congressman Bentz combines a deep personal and professional roots in his area with a passion for addressing its most pressing challenges. Before election to Congress in 2020, Congressman Bentz served in both our Oregon House and Senate. In his current role in Congress, he serves on two influential committees, the House Natural Resource Committee, where he's involved in work on water, federal lands, wildlife, and fisheries, and the House Judiciary Committee, which includes issues in the courts, intellectual properties, regulatory oversight. Additionally, his subcommittee work on courts, intellectual property, water and wildlife fisheries underscores his commitment to both the rural livelihood and the ensuring smart governance for generations to come. Please join me in welcoming Congressman Bentz to our Medford Road Rotary.
Thank you, Mike, for that most kind introduction, and thank Rotarians for this opportunity to speak to you today. I have to say I had some flashbacks when Natalie was talking about her cats. My wife's a veterinarian and she just retired 2 years ago. And so she was a sole practitioner for 38 years and she would bring cats home all the time. And I would wake up in the middle of the night and a cat would be looking me right in the face. And I don't miss that one bit. And just saying, but cats are important creatures. We have two of them now at our house with two dogs. And I'm sure if it came down to it, I'd get the gate and the animals would stay if my wife had to make a choice. But it's great to be here with you. So what I'm planning on doing is showing you a little slideshow that is a bunch of pictures that I took, and I just threw them together so that kind of give you a very, very, very general feel for what's going on back there. Kind of that. Then I'll get into what's really going on after we go through some of these. I took this picture actually as we were driving for me to address the Southern Oregon Honor Flight. We were leaving my office in the Cannon building, and I looked up and I saw the Capitol in the clearest, the most defined detail. I think I've seen it since I got there almost 5 years ago. And the reason I like this picture is because every time I see this building, I'm reminded of how much opportunity there truly is to do good things in it. Now, if you go inside it, you have an entirely different opinion of how Congress works. But from the outside, the truth is it sends real signals of hope. And I will also tell you that when we're working, as difficult as issues sometimes are, it never fails to escape me how lucky I am to have this job and to have the opportunity to weigh in on these issues. I will say one thing that's I was asked by one of your newspapers here, or maybe the newspaper here a few hours ago, what I wanted people to remember me for, and I there's many things, but I would say being able to bring the issues that rural Oregon has to that venue is an honor like very few people ever have, and it's the training I've done and the work I've done to become a lawyer and to spend 30 years practicing law and then going 12 years in the Oregon legislature and so forth has served me extraordinarily well. And I think but I'm one of 222 Republicans and one of 432 or 33 total members of the House. Yet I get blamed for pretty much everything as though I'm the president. Now, I don't mind that particularly. It's just that it's kind of overselling the ability of one person to do a huge amount in that space. You can still be extremely effective if you learn what you're doing and how to do it. And I've been able to make some serious things happen that I think are for the benefit of all of us here. But it's not just about passing bills. It's how you weigh in, how you're perceived, who you know, how smart you are in keeping your mouth shut sometimes. So This is a picture of one of the credenzas in my office. I take it because those are all challenge coins, and there's one in the front that's rather large. There it is. It's actually the president's challenge coin, and I don't have a challenge coin, and I didn't even know what they were really until I got there. And then everybody seems to bring, or many people bring them in, and that's why you see so many. This particular coin is about twice the size of most of the rest of them. Pretty impressive. I brought it in. I'll show you where I got it, but I brought it in on a Saturday, and I was showing it to the security guards at the door because they're bored. And so when you come in, if you have anything to share with them, particularly on a Saturday, they make some perk up, and they were really excited about it. One of them said, "You wouldn't want to drop this on your foot," and they're right. It's amazingly heavy for a coin. This is an invitation I got to go to the White House earlier this month for a dinner in the remodeled Rose Garden. And so I've learned that one of the most important things in DC is sleep. You need to get a lot of it, and you don't have time to get much of any of it. So I told my staff, look, I'm going to work all day Saturday. I don't need to go to the Rose Garden. I've been to the Rose Garden before. And they said, no, you're going. And so I went. This is a picture of the Rose Garden as it was redone. What you need to know is not one rose was touched. The roses are all still there, but the grass that was there is now gone and replaced with that patio that you see. The concept that, as the president explained it that night, was that when they had tables set up out in the grass, then people's shoes would sink down into the grass, particularly people who were wearing high heel shoes. So they changed it so they could make more use of it. It happened that they had invited about 60 or 70 of we Republican congressmen and women to this particular evening event. You can see the tables are set up for 4 people. That's the menu. It was an extremely nice dinner. I'm happy I was there. This is the president as he stood up to talk to us. He talked as he's wont to do for quite a while while ready to sit down and have dinner. But eventually he stopped and sat down. There's music playing across the venue from these big speakers, and the president has a computer next to him, and he runs the music. He picks it out, and so which is a bit odd, but at least we knew who to blame. We didn't like it. The reason I show you this picture is because if you look toward the clear across, you see a couple of doors, and those doors enter into the Oval Office. I had no idea, but we were invited before dinner to go into the Oval Office, 20 of us at a time. And so I went with the second group. We waited in the Roosevelt room, and then the door opened across a hallway, actually, and the president invited us into the Oval Office, shook hands with each of us on the way in, and then he had a person standing there with a large bushel basket of those challenge coins, and we were handed one. It was quite interesting. I've been in the Oval Office before. The last time, frankly, that I got to wander around inside it was way back in the early 80s when a friend took 3 or 4 of us through the building when the then president wasn't there. And we got to, the security was like 0 back in 81. Now it's obviously that would never happen. So when it was time to leave though, we came out those 2 doors and walked down steps into the Rose Garden. So I never understood when you see the Oval Office where it was. It's quite interesting. I show you this because we try to figure out what people are thinking. And so we're constantly looking at polling. And I think you'll find this extraordinarily interesting because this guides in many respects what we're trying to do, which is address inflation and the cost of living. And so when I come down here and I talk to everybody, I'm trying to figure out how in the world to drive, what can I do in DC to help drive jobs and pay up and cost of living down. And so this is a granular approach when I talk to everybody here because you guys know you've been here for years and you should be able to tell me what you think we should be doing here in this space. To that end, I met with a number of different groups over the last couple of days, but recently with county commissioners and others. And we are focusing on trying to get you more money for your airport because that would help, I think, drive economic development. And I've met now 3 times with U.S. Department of Transportation talking about your Southern interchange, because I think those are 2 of the more interesting things that could help you and help drive your economy to greater heights. And if you have other ideas, then for goodness sake, share them, because that's why I'm there. It's to listen and try to do stuff. This is a view out my window. I'm in the Cannon building, and that's looking inside. So that's my view. They're in the process now of turning that into a water feature, some sort of a big fountain. That's what the round thing is. And then there'll be trees around the edges and then grass across it. They've been at that ever since I got into the building 2.5 years ago. They anticipate being done sometime in the next 3 or 4 months. So we're very happy for that. This is something in anticipation of a question about the Epstein situation. And it's a little hard to read, but we're happy to supply it if people would like to see it. But it's a summary of why the Oversight Committee's approach will be dramatically more effective and protective than the discharge, the so-called discharge petition. The discharge petition is on the right. The Comer's Oversight Committee's activities are on the left. And the idea here is to go through and show the difference in approaches and why the Comer Committee approach is going to be far more protective of those who are damaged. They think that approximately 1,000, perhaps as many as 1,000 women were victims of that monster Epstein and those who were in cohorts with him. I think many people think that if the discharge petition doesn't happen, they'll never get to see all of the documents. I would simply suggest that they're not going to get to see all the documents with the discharge petition, because the discharge petition is not set up to get all of the documents or all of the information. If you look at this, you'll see that the Oversight Committee has subpoena power and has the ability to take depositions and has the ability to get documents that the discharge petition process would never get. I'm a lawyer. I've been through this I don't know how many times in trying to get information from people, and you've got to have subpoena power to get it. Otherwise, you won't. You've got to have the power to drag people into court if they don't agree, and the discharge petition will not do that. The other thing that's hugely important here is how we protect, and as I mentioned, perhaps as many as 1,000 people whose names are not protected should the discharge petition absolutely not protected if that passes. It may well pass, and then everybody will get a chance to see this play out, which may be extremely sad. But the votes right now, it takes 218 votes to bring a matter to the floor. Votes, signatures on a discharge petition. 218. There are currently 217 signatories on that petition. Of the 217, 213 are Democrats and 4 are Republicans. The 4 that are Republicans are Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Mr. Massey. I know them all, and their decisions have been made for various reasons. But if indeed Congressman Grijalva's daughter was elected last night from Arizona, she will be the 218th signature on this bill, and it's going to be a sad thing, but it may well happen. We'll see. Many people have talked about Medicaid, and I'm happy that they are doing that. We are doing so, and this is just to show how the cost of that particular program is skyrocketing. But it's also to show the orange is the federal expenditure each year, the black is the state. And what's happening is a program that was originally conceptualized as being about a 50-50 program between the state and the Fed is changing, and more money is being drawn down out of the federal coffers to the states. This is a hugely complex area, incredibly important. The program's incredibly important. And the challenge is, how in the world do we make it work better for those who are legally entitled to it? This is, as I'm digging into where the money is going, I asked one of my staff to go find out how, because I hear over and over again, well, it's healthcare insurers that are the problem. I said, go find the stock price of healthcare insurers since the Obamacare was passed. And the orange line is the stock price of healthcare insurers. And you can see that somebody's making money in this business. And exactly whether or not it's more than it should be is something that we will be looking into. This simply shows that they've done awfully well. Maybe it's because more people, maybe many reasons, who knows, but we'll try to find out. These are what polls say on Medicaid. About 86% support removing people who are ineligible, that is, people that make too much money or are here illegally or refuse to work. 82% support citizenship verification, 72 support work requirements, and 71 believe there's widespread fraud Medicaid. There is fraud. There is no doubt about it. Finding it is always the issue. I made a copy of this because I thought everybody should see how far behind we're falling with China. This is one of the biggest issues in one of my committees. And I'll just say that I took this out of an article out of Bloomberg, which says that we've already lost the race in many of these spaces, that venture capital firms are not going to invest in the United States because China already has these markets sewed up tight. And by that, they mean that they can throw stuff into these spaces and create, whether it's solar panels or lithium batteries or hydrogen or all these things, they can create it at such a low price. No one is going to invest in the United States at all, period. Let's see. And I think this is my last one. This is where I'm meeting with the honor flight. One of the greatest honors of my life is doing this and having the opportunity to say thank you to the military folks that come in to visit. Now, so I think what I'm going to do now is open it for questions because I'm going to run out of time. Otherwise, yes, I'm going to open for questions. So if you don't have any, then I have other stuff to talk about. There's a Groucho Marx who used to say, I'm a man of principle, and if you don't like them, I have others. You.
We're supposed to be at work, Kurt. Come on. Yeah, I still have my eye on. But thanks, Bill, for all the help I can get.
Hello, Congressman Bentz.
Hold on, excuse me for just a moment. Can we go back to the Capitol slide and put it up? Is that possible? No. Let's go back. There we go. All right, go ahead.
Oh, I want to say thank you very much for being here today. I really appreciate it. And I'm Ann Botzer. I'm a visiting Rotarian. And I wrote my question out. Oregon legislators at the end of the legislative session in July set aside a whopping $472 million from our state's general fund to buffer against revenue losses caused by what's called the One Big Beautiful Bill that you enthusiastically supported. I think Oregon's really fortunate to have a Princeton-educated chief economist, Carl Riccadonna, who recently reported some bad news to our Oregon House and Senate Revenue Committees. According to this economist, Riccadonna, that $472 million set aside by the legislature will cover just over half of the predicted $888 million in revenue losses that Oregon will endure in the next 2 years because of the One Big Beautiful Bill. You served in the Oregon legislature. I followed you then. So you know that Oregon's not a wealthy state. We have many unmet needs here in our citizenry. And you represent a part of our state, especially the rural part, that is particularly needy. I'm just wondering if you could explain why you offered unqualified support and you voted for the One Big Beautiful Bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the excellent question. So, and I had the good luck, if that's it, to serve on the Revenue Committee for 11 of the 12 years I was in Salem. So I know more about those numbers than most that you just shared. And when you talk about the revenue loss, a significant portion of it is because Oregon follows the federal tax code. And each year, when I was on the Revenue Committee, or every other year, we had to go in and decide whether we were going to connect or disconnect with the federal revenue code. Because Oregon is a small state, as you say. Oregon doesn't have its own Oregon revenue code. It doesn't. It adopts most of the federal code and then follows it. Well, in the big bill, we included a whole bunch of extensions of the 2017 Tax Act. And that means that Oregon isn't going to get an increase in taxes, which it was anticipating it would get, because Oregon was anticipating that come December 31st, tax revenue for Oregon would spring up because the federal code would impose an increase in people's taxes of 22%. And Oregon was thinking, great, we're along for the ride. We'll get an increase. Well, guess what? The big bill said, no, we're going to extend the current circumstances existed since 2017. And suddenly Oregon's not going to get that increase. So what Oregon is now doing is going, oh my goodness, we're going to have to disconnect from the federal code so that everybody in Oregon can pay higher taxes. That's what's going to happen. Guarantee it. They're talking about it right now. You can Google it. And so the Revenue Committee is going to go in and have a lengthy discussion that I've sat through 11 of my 12 years there in those kinds of discussions. So I would just say Oregon's got a choice. Does it want to keep the current arrangement where the taxes are where they are, or does it want to disconnect from the federal system and allow people's taxes to go up? That's one. Here's number two. When you talk about that $400 million, you're talking about 2 years. You should have called that out. That's the biennium. That's like a 2-year budget. So cut it in half, and the amount that each year they're talking about is around $230 million. Now, how many dollars does the federal government send into Oregon each year? Anybody want to take a guess? 60 billion. $60 billion a year comes into Oregon, significantly more than Oregon sends out in the form of taxes. $60 billion, and yet you raise a significant issue. 230 million is a lot of money, but in relative terms, it's extraordinarily modest. Let me mention something else. In the big bill, we went to SNAP, for example, and we discovered, everybody should know this, that Oregon's been extraordinarily lax in managing its our food stamp program. We absolutely need food stamps, no doubt of it. But we can't be handling this system as sloppily as has been the case. Oregon lost $244 million out of that in error rates, paying out $244 million than it should have. What fine did the federal government impose on Oregon for that $244 million loss in 1 year? $10 million. So what we said in the big bill, we said, okay, states, if you're going to sloppily manage these programs, you're going to get share in some of your error rates. So if you go over a 6% error rate, you're going to share. And I could go on, but I want to take another question, so go ahead. But I appreciate your question. A lot of stuff in it, and there are many things in the big bill, by the way, I'm not wildly excited about. There are other things that are absolutely superb. For example, the no tax on tips. Last night, we were downtown, had dinner, and when we asked the young lady that was waiting on our table how much she made in tips each year, I said, do you make more than $25,000? And she said, yes, I do. She goes, I make closer to $50,000 in tips each year. I go, really? Do you realize that the bill we just passed, and I voted for, reduces your tax on $25,000 worth of tips to zero? And it's retroactive to January 1st of this year. She goes, I had no idea. I go, well, let's run the numbers. $25,000, you're in about a 20% federal tax bracket. If you're making 60,000, you are going to save $5,000 this year because she's not paying taxes on tips. Now, that's the kind of thing we're trying to do to raise up the income of those who are working super hard, and I was happy to support that part of the bill. What's next? Next question.
One thing that's really affecting rural nonprofits is we're going to lose VOCA grant money, which is the Victims of Crime Act money that we get from the federal government comes to the states. And I'm not an expert by any means, but my understanding is Oregon doesn't want to sign whatever the federal requirement is, and it has to do with being a sanctuary state. Oh. So victims of crime and the children and all the people who are affected by the loss of that really shouldn't be a non-political kind of contract or whatever, giving that money to the states. I just wondered if that was on your radar at all, that Oregon is not going to be getting VOCA grant money, which is affecting like our Children's Advocacy Center, our the people who help with domestic violence victims, rape victims. The district attorney's office gets funding for that as well that goes to our victim advocates. So I just wondered if that was on your radar at all as something that you could work on.
Yeah, it is on our radar. And thank you for your service as district attorney. I'm trying to remember exactly what we did in that space. But Oregon, as you know, adopted a sanctuary status in 1987 or something like that. And so for the administration, to be suggesting that somehow we can, by I don't know what fiat, change that is a little over the top. And so what we were trying to do, and I've been asked this question before, but I can't remember what I had my staff do, trying to figure out where it was and how we can help. Um, I don't think I have any of the staff here. I think Christian is the one that's leading on that. And so we will do our best to get back to you. I'm sorry I don't know the exact status of that particular thing. I don't, but that's a really good program, and I'll do my best to help protect it. Now, let me share with you that although my White House relations are very, very good, it doesn't mean that when we call the White House, they do exactly what I ask. The challenge that Oregon faces in this sanctuary state space is serious. And I had hoped that somehow we could limit whatever the restrictions might be coming out of the White House when it comes to not cooperating with ICE and that kind of thing to cities such as Portland and Eugene and not Medford. But I was hopeful, but I'm not sure that's where that currently sits. But that's a very good program. And I'm going to guess it's not going to be the only one that might be facing that kind of pressure. So my job is to try to recognize how to do something about what's happening in the immigration space. To that end, the leader in that space is Stephen Miller, and he works in the White House. Very bright guy, challenging personality. But what he came and met with us the other day, and about 60, 70 of us who have significant concerns about how the immigration process is going. We told him so, and we formed up a small group to try to influence how that process is going. I want to emphasize there's quite a space between Congress on the one hand and the White House on the other, but it's not insurmountable to get across it, and we're doing our best to do exactly that. Question here.
I'm also a Rotarian, and so believe there is hope in the human heart, and we unite for good. The current administration is planning cuts in cancer research, in the CDC, in university health contracts, and medical research, food cuts, and Medicaid and mental health services. Administration also believes that global warming is a hoax. Reminds me of the Barry McGuire song. So if you could tell me why you believe we're not on
the distraction. I knew you were going there. Not because of my age. I just happened to hear the song. No, never mind. Eva destruction. So you ask a bunch of questions. And I just want to say one thing again. Oregon's receiving $60 billion a year from the federal government. And each one of the cuts that you are talking about when it comes to Oregon needs to be measured against the incredibly high probability that most of that money will continue to come to Oregon, as it should. But going to each one of the cuts, the first thing is to remember why we have to make cuts. And that is because the amount of money we're spending each year exceeds by the amount of money coming in by about $2 trillion. So we spend about $6.5 trillion. We have about $4.5 trillion coming in. Some people would say, well, go get $2 trillion from Elon Musk. So if we took all of the money from the billionaires, it would pay for 1 year. It's about $6 trillion. If we just took all their money and just all of it, first of all, we'd be rid of those pesky billionaires. And secondly, we would have paid for 1 year of operations. What do we do next? So that's not going to work, is what I'm trying to tell you. So the question is, how in the world do we reduce spending? Let me just say this. I have learned every program, almost every program we spend money on is a good program. We don't spend too much money on bad programs. I mean, some people might think some things are bad, but the truth of it is, everything we spend money on has a constituency. By the way, I'm a huge supporter of cancer research. What we should be doing is asking, how much money are we still spending on cancer research after the cuts that if you would give me those numbers, I would love to see them. On the issue of global warming, it is getting hotter. It is getting drier. And what I have disputed with any number of people has been where we focus our attention. Mitigation means you try to drive down the amount of CO2 you're creating. on the other side is adaptation, which means you recognize that if we stopped creating CO2 tomorrow in the United States, it would make no difference for 40 years. None. And so that's not me talking, that's Oregon State. When I was in the Oregon legislature, and I said, well, does that mean our future is baked in? And they said, yes, it's baked in. So we should be getting ready for that 40 years because our forests are burning up. Water is shrinking. We've got to focus on adaptation. On the mitigation side, I just want to say that when I was in the Oregon legislature, I was told time and time again that China was going to stop burning coal. It hasn't. This year, it kind of redoubled its efforts to burn more coal. Why? It wants to win the race for artificial intelligence. But anyway, I'm not disputing the EVA destruction analogy. I'm just saying one of the reasons I'm happy to be in DC is that I have a chance to try to head that off. But the dangers are significant. If you will give me your numbers, I met with Asante yesterday. I met with Providence yesterday. I've been meeting with all my hospitals to try to see what the impact's going to be. I was on the airplane with Dr. Hecox, I think that Doctors Hecox, Mr. and Mrs., and talked to them yesterday. Totally, they recognized me and we talked. Anyway, I think I have time for one more question.
It's Peter. Kurt's here.
The Constitution gives Congress the power to levy taxes. I've had some sense that Congress has been very willing to allow President Trump to sort of stomp all over the prerogatives of Congress. You've said one of the ways in which you would have unique power would be if you were to join, presumably, all of the Democrats in saying, no, we're going to take back the power. We did not give Trump the power to levy taxes, 50% to Brazil because he's unhappy about Bolsonaro. It's like, come on, he's acting like he's in charge of taxes and Congress is in charge of taxes. Come on, stand up for yourselves as a congressman.
So I would say as to tariffs, I've never been a huge fan of tariffs. I didn't have much to say about it in the Oregon legislature. But as the president has started down this tariff road, I've gone to my constituents like you and others and said, what do you think? How is it hurting you? Is this good or bad for you? How do you want me to reach out to the White House and talk about tariffs? Because I need to know how the impact of these on my folks. The concept that the president has in doing what he's doing is to drive up the wages of people in the United States. That's the concept. Get more manufacturing here to bring back some of the stuff that we lost as free trade free in quotes. That slide I showed you about China taking over in those spaces, that's a result of us not protecting against just that type of thing over the past 20 years. And look where we are now, begging China to supply us with rare earth minerals, literally begging, because they have them and we don't. And so how the tariffs operate to get us back into a position of defending ourselves is incredibly important. When my folks tell me that a tariff is causing them difficulties, I reach out to the White House and say so. For real, I go to my staff. Now, do they listen? Not so much early on, maybe more now. So as different things have been happening. But to say that I'm not reaching out would be incorrect. You guys have been great, and I deeply appreciate this opportunity to talk to you. Thank you so much.
One more round of applause for our speaker, Representative Congressman Bentz. Congressman, as a thank you for being our speaker, we have a children's book. We'll donate to the Smart Reading Program in your name. Today's book is Roar. We will get it into the hands of a young reader. Next week, October 1st, we will have an update from our World Community Service Committee, and our guest speaker will be District Governor Chris Waugh. Thank you to all involved Rotarians today to help making this meeting happen. Our greeters, sergeants, Gene Taylor, program committee, our amazing tech team, John and Scott. Thank you all to people who joined us on Zoom. For our guests, our Rotarians, Jim, Ann, Chuck, Rob, Lisa, and Marla, and I may have missed somebody. We had a lot of guests today, sorry. And also guests Nick and Blake, the congressmen, Chris, Carol, Tim, and Joey, and Amanda. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. If a few folks could help us and tear down, help John and Scott, we'd really appreciate it. Let us all remember, now is the time to unite for good. Thank you. I think we are adjourned.